Big ones, little ones, fiddly ones, powerful ones. The ones for the car or the truck, caravan, boat, mobility scooter, solar system. In fact, for any kind of battery, go straight to Battery Central Ipswich. They'll even help you when you know what you need to power but have no idea what'll do the job. Battery Central Ipswich, 280 Brisbane Street, West Ipswich, in the yellow building. Expert advice, better batteries, best prices every day. That's Battery Central Ipswich.
Hey guys, welcome to our channel and thanks for joining us. As you may or may not know, at Battery Central we sponsor Kevin and his street stock or street sedan, I believe the class is, up here in Queensland. And he runs all the tracks, Hartsfield, Ipswich, I'm not sure exactly Gatton, I believe, like most of the tracks around here. So, relatively stock VN Commodore, manual, VN, VP, and VR, realistically, they're all the same car. V6, the good old Buick V8 that they lopped the two rear cylinders off, turned them into a 6-cylinder. Pretty generally reliable. A few known issues, a couple of which we've stumbled across, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But just a quick look, the bonnet's obviously sitting on the roof because that's what you do with your bonnet. We have the rear mounted radiator back there, which you probably can't see from this side. Obviously your driver's seat and just your pedal box and steering wheel. There's not much going on in here, a few gauges, a few of the basics. Have a Amaron battery, of course, nothing but the best. The only battery I'd trust to do the job. And you can see it on there. It's on charge because, you know, Speedway car. Radiator sitting back there with a fan on it. Fuel cells in the back. Nothing too special. It looks funny on the standard Pursuities. Looks like some Hoonmobile. Got proper tyres for it, but it just looks weird when it's on the standards. Of course, you got your kill switch up here, which, you know, in an emergency the car rolls over or there's a fire, one of the emergency crew can come over and smack that, and in theory it shuts the vehicle down. But speaking of V6s and their issues, a couple of problems they're known for. High mileage motors are known to spin cam bearings. It's a pretty common fault. It happens to a lot of them. Harmonic balances. The rubber on the front here, the vulcanization deteriorates over time. The center separates from the outside and your accessory drive won't spin. And it makes a heck of a racket when that happens. And the other main fault that these things have is the balance shaft or counterbalance shaft, depending on what you want to call it. Now they put that in these, then they basically lopped this was originally a Buick V8 found mostly in front wheel drive cars, and they effectively went, fuel prices, we need to make a better motor. So they basically just cut the two rear cylinders off and turned it into a V6. Therefore, they need a balance shaft to help settle everything down. Problem is, they were sort of an afterthought and not really well installed, and at consistent high RPM, they've been known to snap, shatter, explode, seize up, wear out, any number of that combination. This particular one, at the end of one meet, just started knocking real bad. We were concerned because you don't want to ever hear a knock in a motor, especially, you know, especially not something as prominent as that. Took a punt that it was the balancer, balance shaft, and thankfully after pulling everything apart, you can see all the RTV on places where we've been in there and redone it. Thankfully it was actually the balancer. I didn't video that because I thought, yep, end of the problems, done. You know, quick 5-minute job. Well, I say relatively speaking compared to rebuilding a motor. I wasn't expecting to really have enough footage to do anything else with. Wish I had have recorded it because it would have been a nice intro to this video. But anyway, so currently we have a couple of other issues. Couple of minor things, then new O2 sensor that's broken the wiring off, then new oil sensor that's broken the wire off. The main one being the fuel pressure regulator. Now these things work on a return to tank system. Once the pressure builds up to a certain amount, the little regulator here bypasses the extra back to the tank. Now these have a rubber diaphragm in them that works off vacuum. So as the vacuum decreases, so when you open the throttle up and you give the engine more air, the vacuum decreases. So the vacuum pulling on this diaphragm decreases. It basically the valve inside the diaphragm opens and allows more fuel to come through relative to the pressure, so that it increases the fuel rail pressure. And in doing so, obviously, adds more fuel to the motor. Now, this one's been bad for a while insofar as it's just being stuck at full return. It hasn't really been returning the correct pressure. So we did put an external regulator on. Yep, there goes the wheel nuts. And by putting the external regulator on, we kind of cheesed the system a bit and got away and having to worry about fuel pressure too much. Occasionally be a bit rich, occasionally be a bit lean, but generally not horrible. But then that rubber diaphragm completely collapsed. So now fuel was pouring straight out of there. And of course the other end of that's a vacuum line which goes straight into the intake manifold. And that means that it was pumping raw fuel straight into the intake manifold. So it was always horribly rich at idle. And it'd always stumble and miss and carry on, making it seem like it was a bad injector or something like that. And it'd clear up at higher RPM, obviously. But it would probably run lean at full noise. And that was doing two things. One is obviously down on power and hurting the motor that way. The other thing it was doing was it was adding a lot of fuel to the oil, so it was thinning the oil down, which of course stresses out components such as cam bearings and big ends. Hopefully we haven't heard any of that. We don't know for sure. We're going to fix this fuel regulator, fire it up, give it a good run. Obviously we need to change the oil again because we've changed it, but we've got fuel back in there again because we didn't know that was the problem. We thought we had a stuck injector. And after we've run it for a while, we'll give it a bit of a hard time, see what the oil pressure's like, make sure there's no knocks or anything like that. And hopefully it's good. We're about halfway through the season. At the end of the season, we're going to pull the motor, refresh it. We need to do the clutch anyway, so it'd be a good time to do the whole thing. I've got to redo some of the exhaust that's leaking and whatever anyway, so do it all at once, get it over and done with, and solve those problems. So I will bring you guys along on the journey as we do it. The one thing I do know is that we're having to modify a fuel regulator, because the OEM fuel regulator are $300 to $400 even for an aftermarket one. It's ridiculous. So we're going to put, seeing as this one's stuck on full flow mode anyway, they do bolt into the end of the rail here, but they're a weird fitting. I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything with that. So what I'll do is I'll put some quick steel in this return line, vacuum line here, and put another vacuum regulated valve in here, so that we've got an independent. We'll get rid of this fuel pressure regulator here, so it's just receiving the maximum fuel pressure it needs, or we'll put an adjustable one in possibly, and then we'll put an adjustable return one in here that's vacuum triggered, so once again the less vacuum there is, the more fuel it gets. I think that's going to be the easiest way of doing it, putting a separate one in line. I think it'll be a cleaner, tidier, plus we can monitor the return pressure because it'll have a gauge on it as well. So we're monitoring the fuel pump pressure, which is important obviously, from the fuel tank and the fuel pump, and we'll be monitoring the pressure returning back to the tank, so we can get it both ways, so we can see if there's a big problem there. That's the main thing. We need to do a oil pressure sender, O2 sender, O2 sensor. Need to put add to the switch panel, so I can put a switch in for the fan, the switch in for the fuel pump, just so that they're independently switched, because at the moment they all come on when you turn the ignition on, which isn't always what you want, especially if you're trying to diagnose other problems. I'll do a general nut and bolt check on it, make sure it's all good to go. There's a few little bits and pieces I want to tidy up, but we're not going to do a lot now. We're going to do most of it in the off season once we pull the motor. But yeah, as we go through and repair stuff, I'll bring you guys back and keep an eye on it all, and we'll do this. No, guys, just thought I'd give you a quick update. Sorry about the wind noise, but it's really hot and the fans are staying on. So I've just pulled the front clip off. As you can see, it's living down there now. They're quick release, 2 pins, the whole thing comes out, and cut a few zip ties. So I just thought you might want to see what they look like naked from the front. You see where they just cut the chassis rails off to put this bar here, which actually goes, it's a bit hard to see, but it goes all the way along the chassis rail into the firewall and hooks up with the cage that's in there. Same on this side. So they're pretty strong. Got secondary chains to in case the engine mounts break, the engine won't flip over. And that's the way, same all the way down here. You've got your, come down the side actually, away from the fan. You've got your, where are we? You got your tail shaft loops there, front and rear and middle. There's actually got 3 loops because there's a joint in the middle. Same thing, one on the exhaust in case the exhaust angles. So yeah, we're on our way to, need to have a look and see what's going on here. I don't know if the starters, see if I can get in here. I don't know if the starters come loose or the gearboxes come loose, but something's come loose. That gap shouldn't be there, so I'll have to look into that. But I mean, for the most part, it's a standard car. There's nothing too special about it. Just a bit of bar work at the front here. You can see that this is where the quick, just the 2 pins go in there, and this is the water line that goes all the way to the radiator at the back. It's one of them. The other one's, well, you can't see the other one from here. And this is power steering cooler. So we've got a bit of an oil leak. I think it's coming from the, we've got a busted oil cylinder I was telling you about up there. I'm pretty sure this is where all this is coming from. So we've got to get that sorted. So yeah, fun and games. Alright guys, cheers. Catch you later. Okay guys, so I've done a little bit of work on it. I couldn't bring you guys along because, well, I couldn't get me and the camera into most of the places, but basically we did, excuse the fan noises, it's really hot again. I'm not turning the fans off, it's just too hot. So, yeah, we managed to get our hands on another pressure regulator, so that was really handy because now it doesn't just continuously dump fuel into the throttle body, which is good. So we've changed the oil, changed the filter. I pulled something like 8 litres of oil out of it instead of 5, so it had like 3 litres of fuel in there. So that's the thing. I've wired up a mechanical oil sender, so we've got correct oil pressure now, so we know what's actually going on. We've got, so I've done the old school trick, run the temperature sender. You know how they got the big vacuum canister on the end? They're supposed to go up in there. It's too hard. So I've just run it through the hose, so sitting inside the hose, wrapped some silicone around it, left this clamp loose. I'll tighten this up later once the silicone dries, and that'll work perfectly fine. In the off season we'll change it up, but for now I'm not worried about it. Went through and checked all the plugs. All the plugs were fouled, obviously, the amount of fuel they were getting. Cleaned them all up, redid them all, fixed the firing order because we had 2 plugs in the wrong spot, which is why it was running rough. Went through, loomed, a bit more tape around that one just to hold that in place, but yeah, re-loomed everything we needed to, tidied up all the wiring, got rid of some extra stuff, shortened up this air intake so it's not just sitting here pointlessly and taking up room. It's now just sitting there nicely. Moved the radiator hoses across so they're not belting on the bottom of the connector there, so that's helped. Put the front clip back on, straightened it up a bit because it was really bent and it wouldn't go back on, so I'd bend it. I've added another bracket here. Now this is only clamped on, but this is clamped on deliberately. The idea is if we get a hit in the front, this won't come off on a normal operation, like I can swing off that, but if we get a smack in the front that comes back far enough to hit this, I'd prefer this to just flex down and get it out of the way and be able to finish the race rather than it snapping the pipework. So that's intentional. If it does start coming loose, I'll weld this bar onto here and just leave this one bracketed like that. I've got all these wires up out of the way. We found too the clutch cable was really badly burnt because it was sitting against the header. So I've using the earth strap here because these are actually, you can swing off these things. These are actually a really good braided strap. I'm just using it as a a bit hard to see in there, but I'm using it as a what's it called, not really a bracket to hold out of the way, it's just to stop it swinging, because it sits over this way anyway, but it swings around and smacked against the header. So I've just got it pulled across this way so it can't rub on them. Done the made the spark plug wire spaces out of zip ties just to keep them all tidied up. So she's running good. It still won't cold start. I've still got to work on the cold start. I'm not sure what's happening there, but for now we're not worried about it. There's ways around that. Got the race tyres on it now, so she looks like a real race car. We fixed the baser. Had to make some shims, like half-U shims, to slide in under the bolts and tighten it up. I don't know why. We think the boss on the block's actually bent, because the starter's squared, like straight. We think it's on the block. We think it's had a big hit underneath at some point. So I put all the front clip back on, tidied it up as best I could. Replaced the switch like I said we had to do. Replaced the crush plug on the sump, which I haven't checked, but I don't believe it's leaking. I'm going to lift it up and check in a minute. Yeah, the only thing we've got left to do now is we've got the gauges. It's a bit dark in here, sorry about that. I don't have my light on me. Hang on, let me see if I can fix this problem. That's a little bit better, not amazing, but you'll see. We've got the gauges in here now, proper analog ones, old school gauges. I've just got to finish hooking them up with the light so you can see them, because this thing is useless. Like, I've got both the oil pressures hooked up now and the temp senders. This one reads like 140 psi of pressure or something, and this is reading 80, and I'll far trust this one. And this is reading like 12.5 volts, and this is reading like 14, and this one reads like 65 degrees, and this one reads like 90. So there's definitely, this thing's, I don't even know if the tacho's right. Not that you look at the tacho, you just bounce it off the chip anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But so I've just got a bit of wiring to do. Just got to put the switch in, which I've got sitting there. Just got to put it in for the it's actually sitting over there. Just got to put it in for the fan. That's all we're going to do for now. Got to put some more fuel in it because she's out of fuel. Just waiting for that silicone to dry so that I can put some coolant in the radiator. I ran it yesterday, got it up to temperature, and that's when it started leaking. So I'm actually going to do the same thing. Wait for that to dry. I'll fill it full of water initially, so that I can run up the temp again, see if it's still leaking or not. If it's not leaking, we'll dump some water out, put some coolant in. I'm not going to waste coolant until we know we've got the problem solved. Got to put some fuel in it because I dipped it last night and there's about an inch left in the bottom of the tank. It's a right roll pain because you've got to go through there, and that hole's way too small. But anyway, so I'll probably update you again once the car's completed and ready to go. But hopefully that's about it for now. I'll get this video out, and you should see it by the 30th, hopefully. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Big ones, little ones, fiddly ones, powerful ones. The ones for the car or the truck, caravan, boat, mobility scooter, solar system. In fact, for any kind of battery, go straight to Battery Central Ipswich. They'll even help you when you know what you need to power but have no idea what'll do the job. Battery Central Ipswich, 280 Brisbane Street, West Ipswich, in the yellow building. Expert advice, better batteries, best prices every day. That's Battery Central Ipswich.